You've waited all summer, and now fall is upon us. To talk college football from the highest points in the country, presented by the Far End of the Bench podcast and the Variety Sports Network. Your home for Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference football, featuring Jimmy Pilato and Rev, the Problem Coca. Season 3 of Top of the Mountain Podcast.
Gentlemen, wow, let's get my mic unmuted. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, wow. It is playoff time. Hopefully the teams are more prepared than I just was. I flubbed the intro already. It's a live show, so I can't go back, can't fix it. Welcome into Top of the Mountain Podcast, your home for RMAC football. Presented by the Far End of the Bench YouTube channel, housed on the Variety Sports Network banner. We're also available on Variety Sports Network after the fact. So if you want to catch the replay of the show, if you were not watching live Friday night, you are able to go back and listen. It's on our feed, it's on VSN's feed, and it's also on the the Far End of the Bench YouTube channel. So subscribe here, leave a comment, leave a like. Mountaineer Nation, Sconiers, we got to make sure that we're ready to go. We have a great episode. Obviously, you can tell if you heard the intro, you know that Rev is a part of this show. He's been my co-host all season. He was my teammate at Western Colorado University, so he knows his stuff when it comes to college football and the RMAC in general. He's been on the show all the last 2 seasons, and obviously he's not here today. Thanksgiving weekend, he had to stay late at work, so unfortunately not going to get his opinions. We may be able to get him on. I sent him the link, so the line of communication is open if he's able to, but he did let me know that he's a little bit busy, so probably just going to be me, which is fine. Going to recap the last weekend of RMAC football, talk a little bit about the player, the awards that were given out, Coach of the Year, Players of the Year, those kinds of things, and then we got 2 teams in the playoffs representing the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, so hopefully this show will continue on. This show every Friday live, as long as there is an RMAC team represented in this Division II playoff bracket. We're going to take a look at the bracket fully and see where our 2 teams can figure themselves out. Also going to get us a little bit more knowledge about Central Washington. Watch some of the highlights from their first game this season against Weber State, which Division I opponent. It's tough to take something from that, but we'll talk about all of that when we get to it. I have to mention that got a shout out. If you listened to this show last season, you remember we had Zach Chavez, RMAC representative of the conference, on our show, and he sent me a press release. So we're important enough that we get press releases from the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. So thank you, Zach, for sending this over. Players of the Year for the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference: John Matoka, Nolan Reeve, and Blake Dowd. Colorado School of Mines, John Matoka, Nolan Reed, and Blake Dowd are the 2023 Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference Football Player, Offensive, Defensive, and Special Teams Players of the Year, respectively. The league announced Thursday Colorado State University's Pueblo Sean Chappell and Gary Seidenberger are the league's Offensive and Defensive Freshmen of the Year, respectively. Western Colorado's Jazz Baines is the RMAC Football Coach of the Year. The announcement of the league's individual awards also came out Thursday. Matoka claims the league's Offensive Player of the Year honor after he had another incredible season, which he would led the league, the number 1 Ore Diggers, to a perfect 11-0 record, a 9-0 run through conference play. Redshirt senior quarterback ranks among the nation's top 10 in 10 different categories and leads Division II in passing efficiency with a 178-point rating, while ranking 3rd in both completion percentage, 69%, and passing touchdowns, 36. In his final regular season appearance, Matoka became the NCAA's all-time leader in passing yardage. He's been doing it for a long time. I've made the joke. Rev has made the joke. It feels like I've been seeing him play in a Colorado School of Mines uniform for as long as I can remember. It's obviously not the case, but as of right now, he is doing something that very few have been able to do. It's on the same level as Austin Eckler. Who knows what the opportunities are going to look like. It's a little bit different playing running back and trying to move up into the NFL than trying to play quarterback. It's a totally new game. But what John Matoka has proved is that he was ready for college football at this level, the Division II level, and he came in and really excelled. And it's not something that you can take lightly. He was able to do it. Nolan Reeve, the Defensive Player of the Year, after leading the Ore Diggers efforts with 7 sacks, 9 tackles for loss throughout the regular season. The redshirt senior has been a driving force as an outside linebacker for a stingy Mines defense that limits opponents to a meager 11.5 points per game, Western being included in that. He has appeared in all 11 games and enters the postseason with 39 tackles, 12 solo tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery. The only thing he did not have was an interception. All told, the Mission Viejo, California native also earns a first-team all-conference nod after racking up 70 yards on 9 tackles for loss, 64 of which have come on 7 sacks. He knocked down 5.5 sacks throughout the RMAC schedule and is a leader of the Mines defense that holds opponents to 26.5% third down conversion percentage. That's going to be huge for the Ore Diggers moving forward. When you win at all 3 phases of the game, it normally goes pretty well for you. They've mentioned it 2 times now in both sides of the press release so far. 9-0 record through RMAC play. Nobody came close. This year, Western was the only team that could have possibly given them a fight, and it just wasn't close. Nolan Reed was a big reason why. It was a big reason why that the Ore Diggers defense was the way that they were. Blake Dowd, RMAC Special Teams Player of the Year, racked up 1,585 yards on 34 attempts throughout the regular season, averaged 46.5 yards per attempt with a long of 77 yards accomplished in the second game of the season against Angelo State. Dowd had 5 touchbacks for 7 fair catches, landed 15 punts inside the opponent's 20. 13 of his 34 punts of the year have gone for 50 yards. Blake Dowd, really a weapon, especially when you're playing at this high level in the playoffs. If you can pin your opponent and make them go a longer length of the field, it's not that you're holding on your defense to stop the offense all the time, but if you give them 80 yards of space to defend instead of 15 yards of space to defend, or insert this amount of yards here, it makes it a lot easier just to have those opportunities for stops, sudden changes. People make mistakes if you have forced them to go for farther distances. So Dowd was a real weapon. And special teams, if you can master the special team side of the game, and it'll be something that we'll see for them moving forward. Moving on, Chapel, RMAC Offensive Player of the Year, successful debut season for the Thunderwolves offensive line. Started at center and left tackle for the Pack offense, averaged 42 points per game behind a really weak schedule down the second half. Let's call it what it is. We're not going to sit here and talk about the CSU Pueblo Thunderwolves without mentioning the fact that this coaching staff has been riding the coattails of the success of the coaching staffs that have walked before them, and it's not even near the same place. The 2 teams that are competing in the playoffs this year, you were not even close to sniffing. V-Hill is not the answer for CSU Pueblo, and I hope that the alumni foundation, the fan base figures that out sooner the better, because he pulled the wool over your eyes. He came close against Grand Valley and then beat up on some bad teams, but you were in a dogfight against Black Hills, and if you're the CSU Pueblo of old, that doesn't happen. So sorry to take that away from what Chapel did, but he had a great season and played well in spite of the coaching, because that was this coaching staff should go. The way they treat people, the way they treat their players. Seidenberger leads league's defensive freshman of the year, racked up 50 tackles, 25 solo, 25 assisted in his debut season on 11 appearances, notched 3 pass breakups, recovered a pair of fumbles, and collected 1 interception in the Pack's second game of the year against nationally ranked Grand Valley State program. Moving on to Jazz Baines, our MAC coach of the year, leading the Mountaineers to a 10-1 record in regular season play and a 7-1 mark in RMAC games. The award marks the second in 3 years for the veteran coach and comes after he led his squad to a perfect 6-0 record at home this season, which we have to talk about now. It's a good time to mention Western Colorado opening up the Mountaineer Bowl, reopening the Mountaineer Bowl that's been newly renovated with the turf field. That is the excitement rolling around Gunnison right now. Coach Baines winning this award now for the second time in his career. There was a lot of talk, and I'm sure that people can mention certain things at certain times. It was grim for a long while in Gunnison. A successful run this weekend, a win this weekend, will be the first playoff win for the program since 1996. Jazz Baines deserves the credit that he is getting right now. And in all honesty, as much as you can say about a college football coach caring about his players and it being a small town, It's a special, really special place. And it's awesome to see the success that they're having, and it's behind guys that Rev and I have played with, which is another awesome thing to think about. It's not all of these transfers; it's guys that I know they've brought in, and they've been able to build up this culture that they continue to turn out a really, really good product. And they have offensive coordinator in Joe McClain and defensive coordinator in Todd Howard that are firing on all cylinders and make life really easy on Coach Baines. And I'm sure that he'd admit that it's easy for him to have to just think about what the team needs to do to be effective on the sidelines. He doesn't have to worry about the game plan. He knows that's taken care of. Let's look at the last weekend of regular season play in the RMAC before we get into looking at the playoff bracket. Colorado Mines, for the second year out of 3, put 80-plus points on the Fort Lewis Skyhawks, this time in Durango, 82-0. Skyhawks finished their 4th year in a row without a single victory, and that losing streak going to nearly 1,100 days at this point. Not a lot you can say about that. Colorado Mines now going to enjoy a bye week, so they basically get a double bye, await the winner of the first-round playoff matchup that we're going to talk about here in a second. Colorado Mesa did beat New Mexico Highlands by a touchdown 14 points, 2 touchdowns in Las Vegas, New Mexico, 38-24. Mavericks finish up the season with the win, seem to have something that they can build off of. I think if you're a Colorado Mesa fan, it's disappointing, but you were in a certain position. You had a big win over San Diego. You could build off of some of the really good things that happened. Chadron State holds on. Shout out Michael DeGamilis once again. Love you, buddy. Really proud of you. And on senior day, Chadron able to pull out the victory. South Dakota Mines tried to get behind that offense and Jaden Johansson, but the Eagles hold down 27-19 to win in Chadron. Western Colorado retains the Colorado Classic Trophy, 45-24, after staving off a little bit of a comeback attempt in that third quarter from the Adams State Grizzlies. Adams will no doubt be disappointed at another kind of bad end to the season, but this is where they're at this point. This is their program, and already mentioned CSU Pueblo beat Black Hills State 42-37 on their senior day out in Pueblo, Colorado, for the final scores of the year. Only Western Colorado and Colorado Mines continue on. Everybody else is going to be packing up the pads and heading home. So the final standings are as such. Colorado School of Mines, perfect 9-0 in the conference, 11-0 on the season. They will finish number 1, and more than likely, depending on what happens in this playoff, will be projected to be the number 1 team overall next year in the RMAC as well. Western Colorado, 8-1 in the conference, 10-1 overall. 2 huge wins in the Lone Star Conference that really bolstered their resume. That's why they get the number 2 spot in the Super Region. CSU Pueblo finished 3rd, 7-2 in the conference, 8-3 overall. Black Hills State, Colorado Mesa, both 5-4 in the conference, 6-5, tied for 4th technically. Chadron, South Dakota Mines tie 5-6, 4-5, identical records there. Adams sits at 2-7 in the conference, 3-8 on the season. Highlands 1-8, 2-9 overall, and then Fort Lewis 0-9 and 0-11 for your final RMAC standings. And now it's time to get to the fun part. NCAA Division II playoff bracket. Let's take a look at this thing. It's playoff time, folks. I don't know if anybody's as excited as I am. I'm sure people are. I'm sure this is a big deal. Everybody has to know that this is a massive deal. It's affecting even up to the Division I level. Now we're going to see a 12-team playoff, which is great. Western Colorado and Colorado School of Mines both make it. And let's just talk about, broken out into quadrants. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 4, 28 teams vying to call themselves national champions. Remember, Colorado Mines lost in the national championship last season to Ferris State. This year, Colorado Mines will hold the number 1. They were the number one. So if we're going by March Madness terms, if you know what I'm trying to talk about, then you know exactly what I mean. I don't really know what I'm talking about, but they were the number 1 overall seed, number 1 finished, number 1 ranking in the country. They are in a region with Colorado School of Mines, number 1, Western Colorado 2, Texas Permian Basin, who won the Lone Star Conference, beating Central Washington, number 3. Then you have Augustana and Bemidji State, and also Minnesota State Mankato. So Augustana is hosting Minnesota State Mankato. That's another in-conference rivalry. Texas Permian Basin will host Bemidji State. So going from Minnesota all the way down to West Texas. That'll be interesting to see how that game shakes out. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to watch those two, honestly. I'm already going to have to pay for the RMAC matchup that we're going to break down in depth. I'll get to the other teams when we have to talk about them. I figured I'd only focus on one school that we have the possibility of playing, and that's going to be the Western Colorado Central Washington game. Colorado School of Mines will get the winner of Augustana and Minnesota State, both teams that they've played in the last 3 seasons when they made it to the playoffs. That's the quadrant that we have our RMAC representation. In the bottom left-hand quadrant, if you're looking at NCAA.com, Benedict, the number 1 seed in this region, Delta State, number 2, Valdosta, 3, Lenoir-Rhyne, 4. Lenoir-Rhyne's hosting Shepherd, which is where Tyson Badgett graduated from. If you're a Chicago Bears fan from out there, West Florida is going to travel to Delta State, and Limestone will travel to Valdosta. Valdosta was the runner-up from 2 seasons ago after knocking off Colorado School of Mines in the semifinals. Upper left-hand quadrant, we have Tiffin at number 1, Charleston, West Virginia, number 2, Kutztown, number 3, Slippery Rock, number 4. Maybe it's Slippery Rock. It's either Slippery Rock or Shepherd. It has to be Shepherd because that's who played Colorado Mines. I'm second-guessing myself now. I shouldn't do that. Tiffin will play for the bottom left quadrant. Benedict is playing the winner of Lenoir-Rhyne and Shepherd. So they played the winner of the 4 and the 7. The 4 and 5. I'm sure I know what I'm talking about. Tiffin will play the winner of Slippery Rock hosting East Stroudsburg. Charleston is hosting New Haven, and Kutztown is hosting Virginia Union. And for the final quadrant that we haven't talked about yet, Harding taking on the winner of Central Missouri and Henderson State. Grand Valley State and Ferris State are going to have their third matchup right away in the first round of the playoffs, kind of like how we saw last year with Colorado Mines and CSU Pueblo taking each other on right away. Winner of that game will play the winner of Pittsburgh State taking on the 3rd seed for this one. They're going to be hosting the University of Indianapolis, UIndy. So those are the playoff matchups. If you are a fan of one of those teams, welcome. We appreciate you tuning in to the Top of the Mountain. Be sure to follow at FEOTB Pod on social medias and subscribe to the YouTube channel for all of the different content that we put out throughout the week. Normal Far Under the Bench podcast with myself and Nico Bryant out on Thursdays. We had our new episode drop yesterday, and then obviously Top of the Mountain, as long as we have our MAC representation, which brings us to the beauty of the game that we have here. Western Colorado hosting in Gunnison out there in the middle of the South Central Rocky Mountains, right in between 3 national parks. They are reopening the Mountaineer Bowl with brand new turf for the first time in 2 seasons. Mountaineers will take their home field. Obviously, I feel some kind of emotion. This is going to be very difficult for me to be as unbiased as possible in my analysis. And to be fair, I don't know much about Central Washington. I did a crash course in their football program for about the last hour or so. So I don't know much about them. Obviously, I am rooting very hard for my alma mater, the Western Colorado Mountaineers, to continue on. Let's get to, I have to change that because it's not 9-1, it's 10-1. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing of me. 10-1 Mountaineers. Have to give Coach Baines and company the respect they deserve. Western carries a 4-game winning streak into the matchup. Last loss coming to the RMAC champion. They're the runners-up in the conference. Last loss coming to number 1 ranked Colorado Mines, which I mentioned, number 1 overall in the entire bracket. Central Washington took 2 early losses this season. They played Weber State, and I have the schedule pulled up here. So, Jimmy, you just exited it out. Okay. Not the fear. Now you guys get to hear how my brain works on a normal basis. Weber State and Montana Tech. So Weber State, a Division I a AA school that you go up in competition to play. Montana Tech is a NAIA school. They are ranked number 16 in the NAIA, but they are an NAIA school. So you lose to a program a level above you, you lose to a program a level below you, and then you beat number 9 ranked Angelo State, go on a winning streak from there where you beat Western Oregon 17-7, Western New Mexico 55-17, Eastern New Mexico 38-35, Midwestern State 10-7, West Texas A&M 30-14, A&M Kingsville 21-7, and then in the Lone Star Championship, you lose to UT Permian Basin, who's now number 17 in the country, 42-14. Kind of get beat up in that game. On the whole, you look at this and go, at least you guys bounce back from there you go, Rev. Back in the bowl. I'm excited. I know you're excited. If you're looking at it from a Central Washington perspective, coming in and how they finished their season, at least you bounced back from that loss to Montana Tech, because that could have been dark times. That's where some programs, if you're less mentally tough, and obviously when you're looking at this program and let's see, roster. Like I said, I'm learning all of this stuff up on the fly. So Coach Chris Fisk is the head coach. And let's see, he has been there this is his 5th season. So in the 5 seasons at Central Washington, he has now built a program to where they can look up, and after even getting a very disappointing loss to Montana Tech, you turn around and go on a hell of a winning streak and fall just short of winning your conference. You can kind of say something similar about Western Colorado. Western Colorado took care of business, I would say, more so at the beginning of their schedule, where you beat West Texas A&M, who, let's look at, this is a good point to talk about common opponents. So Western beat West Texas A&M 28-6 and Texas Permian Basin 35-27. When we look at Central Washington's matchups against them, they beat West Texas 30-14. So West Texas obviously not as strong this year. And Texas Permian Basin put 42 onto Central Washington. Now, that's a Texas Permian Basin team at the end of the season. Western Colorado saw them at the very beginning. Who knows what kind of factor that is throwing into things. But both teams were on solid winning streaks, had to bounce back from adversity, and have found themselves in this position. So there's not much negative that you can say about either squad. Going through Central Washington's website, looking at, let's see, this is from the press release that they are at their first round playoffs coming to. So this is the Central Washington perspective. Central Washington Wildcat football team will head to Gunnison, Colorado for the first round of the NCAA Division II football playoffs, taking on the nationally 10th ranked and 2nd seed in Super Region 4 with Western Colorado Mountaineers, 11 a.m. Pacific time. That is high noon Mountain Standard Time. It'll be on the RMAC network, which unfortunately, if you were not watching that last week of the season, RMAC network is going to be pay-per-view. It's going to be worth it, hopefully. Now, this is where I have to look at Colorado. I have to look at Colorado Mines, and I have to look at Western directly. Like, look at me in the eyes here. Look right down the barrel of my camera. We need to make this worth paying for, because obviously the RMAC is sick and tired of you guys going on deep playoff runs and them not being able to profit off of the increased traffic going to their channel at that point. So they are making it, they're forcing it to be pay-per-view. We have to make sure that we have a lot of pay-per-view football to watch. That's all I'm going to say. CWU fell to the Texas Permian Basin Falcons by a 42-14 score in Lone Star Conference Championship in Midland, Texas. You jealous because you from Midland. Put Booby in. You jealous. Wildcats fell behind 14-0 after the first quarter. Kennedy McGill finished the game completing 9 of his 16 passes, 148 yards, 1 touchdown. McGill also led the rushing attack with 64 yards. Kennedy McGill is a dual threat quarterback. In the Weber State game that I watched, he did hurt the defense with his arm as well as his legs. He is a very good, he's a guy that you look at and play a Division II college football style of game. Let's see, looks 2-run heavy teams. Yes, stingy defenses colliding. Central Washington. The good thing about this game, when you look at the two teams on film and when you look at the two teams on the screen this weekend, and I'm sure, Rev, you'll have to chime in and see if you agree, they look very physically the same. There's not a size differential. I think when we saw Kearney come in, they were massive compared to what Western Colorado had to throw up against them, and I think that did hurt them at that time. This Central Washington team matches up pretty evenly, I would say. There's some explosivity in certain areas on both sides of the ball. I think Davon Butler brings a little bit more to the running game, but Central Washington has a couple really fast slot receivers. Remind me of some of the guys that Oregon has running around. There's more than likely going to be times where both teams' units are going to be doing well, and it'll be who can put them together at the correct moments. I think there are going to be times where Western Colorado's defense is going to look like nobody in the country is going to be able to score on them. And that's going to be awesome. That is the point where you have to get Nash, you have to get Davon, you have to get Ritters, you have to get your offense going at the time where your defense is not giving up any points and see if you can build a lead. What they didn't do enough of 2 years ago when Kearney came to Gunnison was they didn't put it together enough on both sides of the ball. One side was here, the other side was down here. The defense held them in that game as long as they could. And when you left it that close, when you leave it that close in big moments, any little mistake that happens is catastrophic. And that's what ended up costing you the game. One flinch, one flick of the wrist, and Western Colorado, instead of winning their first playoff game in 23 years at that point, end up losing, and Kearney moves on and end up getting beaten up in the next round. I want them to do well in as long as they play in the playoffs. Here's the big thing that I want as a Western Colorado alumni. I want a playoff win. I want to have to make the decision next weekend. Hey, is it worth trying to brave the pass in November and seeing, because I believe if they win, I should just keep tabs open. I tell this to my kids that I teach too. Why did I close that? They probably still need it. So if Western Colorado wins, they should host whomever wins the other side of their end of the bracket. So they're playing the winner of Texas Permian Basin and Bemidji State. Could be a rematch from earlier on in the year, or you're going to get a rematch of the Lone Star. That's pretty even, I would say, coverage of all the conferences in the super region for RMAC with Colorado, School of Mines, Western Colorado. I believe it's the SLIAC for Augustana and Minnesota State Mankato and Bemidji State. So they have 3 teams. Then Texas Permian Basin, Central Washington, obviously the representation out of the Lone Star. Let's see. Safety from Central Washington, Volk has 11 picks on the season. That's going to be tough for this Western Colorado team, because here's going to be the other thing. I think that Western Colorado is going to benefit from the experience that they had from 2021. I think the moment at that point for the program was just so massive, because that season really did come out of nowhere. You had Will Lytle, you had Lane Ferris, you had these guys that had taken the year off for COVID, and then when they came back, everything aligned. The stars aligned, the planets aligned ever so nicely, and Hercules was defeating the Titans at that moment. They panicked a little bit. I think that they did. I think that they didn't really know how to handle things, and that's no slight to anybody, because nobody had ever been there before. Anywhere, even when this coaching staff was at Shadron, they had never been there before. So now you've been to the first round of the playoffs. You've hosted a playoff game. You know what it's going to be like, the emotions that are played. You're going to have the advantage, because coming from Central Washington, you're going to have to, A, play in the mountains, B, play at 7,000 feet elevation, and nobody adjusts well to that. And there's no, I guess they could be flying in Gunnison Airport, but I really don't know. I'd have to do some insider research, and I probably could, but it would just take too long, and the show would be over by then. I don't know if they're flying into Denver and driving 3 hours by bus, or what the plan is for them to get to Gunnison, but it's a small airport to fly directly into. They have planes that do it, and I'm sure the NCAA, they're the ones taking care of it, so it's not on the program at this point. That's the awesome thing about getting to play this extra postseason football. Really, let's just hope that we have an awesome game to talk about, and we'll go through now. So let's see. Mountaineer press release. So we read the Central Washington side of things, Mountaineer side. Western Colorado will host Central Washington first round of NCAA Division II playoffs, slated for noon Mountain Standard Time at the Mountaineer Bowl inside Rady Sports Family Sports Complex. Fans are encouraged to arrive to the game as early, as there will only be one entrance available that will be open at 10:30 a.m. Parking will be available in the UC Paul Wright Gym parking lots. ADA parking available in the Dolores lot. Fans who cannot make it to the game may watch on the RMAC network, but because of this NCAA championship event, it will cost $9.95 to stream the game or $19.95 for all Division II playoff games. So that's actually, at least they're giving you the option for all of the games. And I don't know about the other Western Colorado fans, but I may pick that whole NCAA Division II playoff package up because I'm hoping that we get a rematch from middle of the season. That's what a lot of Western Colorado alumni are hoping for. So obviously I want to buy it for that. But even still, if this is the Colorado School of Mines team to really take that next level, I'd want to be able to see it. So that's the Mountaineer press release there. Let's see. Got some other pretty good kudos to give out. Coach Baines, obviously, RMAC Coach of the Year. First team all-conference players, Davon Butler, Kendall Lightfoot, Bryce Lucas, and Tanner Tomlinson. Tomlinson, offensive lineman, Bryce Lucas, I believe, DB, Kendall Lightfoot, linebacker, and Davon Butler, the big running back this year. Second team all-conference, Andrew Arterburn, Wyatt Burr, Ricky Freeman, Drew Montez, and Cy Shop. So 12 Mountaineers earned first or second honorable mention and honorable mention honors. Let's see the honorable mentions here. Give those guys a shout out. Stevie Byron, Cason James, and Drew Nash all received a spot on the honorable mention list. That is awesome. The talent that we're seeing in Gunnison right now. I think that's something that we're going to see. It's going to be interesting because Western's not in this position a lot. I think Central Washington is probably watching film and they're probably in their room right now. How are we going to stop Davon Butler? That makes me giddy inside because I remember when Davon Butler was an 18-year-old freshman. I mean, he had a beard still, but I was like, yo, dude, you're skinny. How are you going to play? We got in pads, and I'll tell you, he never really took a solid hit. Found the openings right away. Who's going to win in the trenches? Nobody has a size advantage. It's going to be the nastier team. Tanner Tomlinson is going to have to lead his offensive line unit. Defensive line with Ricky Freeman is going to have to show up, make life miserable. Get after it. Maybe that's the message that we should send here. Western Colorado should just go out there and swing. Be Rocky. They don't know it's a damn show. They think it's a damn fight. Make it a fight. I think you can win one. We'll be back next week for more RMAC action. Be sure to follow at FEOTB Pod. You can see it down there on the screen. My prediction, Western Colorado wins. They will be taking on UT Permian Basin. And let's see, Colorado School of Mines will be getting prepared for Augustana. I'd like to see Augustana and Colorado School of Mines play. Again, that was a fun matchup from a couple years ago. And be sure to check out Far End of the Bench Thursdays. Sunday Scaries will be back at some point. It's just been a while. A lot to talk about school. I've been on a lot of meetings. Didn't really want to mention it. We will be back after Thanksgiving, so enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday. Hopefully you are all celebrating and enjoying the time that a lot of people get off. Get to spend that time with some family. If you're going Black Friday shopping, be smart, be safe. If you're one of my students, make sure that you're looking at your assignments over break. We're not forgetting about anything. Shout out to the Castle Rock Middle School wrestling team. Got a big match performance last night. So a lot of things going well. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know it was a little bit old school, no Rev. He'll be back next week. But for now, thank you guys for tuning in. Top of Mountain. Enjoy the first round of NCAA Division II playoffs. Western Colorado hosts Central Washington. Kickoff is at noon Mountain Standard Time on the RMAC network. Costs $9.99 if you want to stream just the game. Other than that, I will catch you guys over on the far end of the bench.